So I was going through here on Twitter, and I found a great thread that explains Antifa and how they work and how they operate and all that. And first, to start off with, yes, the guy who stole Nancy Pelosi's podium, him and I follow each other. We're actually kind of friends. Don't worry about it. Nothing's going on. We're not colluding. And I'm also going to censor my own Twitter bio or at thing around here because fuck me. I don't want anybody seeing this know what my account is on Twitter. Anyways, secondly, I'm a little sickish right now, and I'm retarded, so I'm definitely gonna be sniffling a lot and fumbling over my words and stuff like that. But hopefully you'll at least understand. And if you don't understand me, you can go look up Danny Wolf on Twitter and read this for yourself. Um, but anyways, here's how he starts. I infiltrated Antifa for 6 months back in 2017 to 2018 to subvert and sabotage, but also to understand my enemy. I wanted to get inside their heads, and the best way to do that is to get them to let their guard down because they think you're one of them. After 6 months, I was at the upper limits of my ability to hold my tongue and blend in while listening to them spew the most retarded bullshit imaginable. Even someone who's well read in Marx would laugh at the average anti fascist's belief about Marxism and left wing philosophy. The modern American version of the movement is a shaky alliance between left wing anarchists and communists, hence the black and red colors in their symbolism. They've agreed to set their differences aside and sort things out after they're overthrown the government, which is their primary mission. For anybody who thinks it's something more noble like policy reform, no. It's about seizing power, plain and simple. One thing I notice is that each Antifa organization has an unspoken hierarchy. Black militants, which will be a common theme, will always be the public facing leadership positions, where they could scream through a bullhorn and agitate the rank and file into a frenzy. The organizers were almost always white women and gays. The trans element was usually delegated to being mere foot soldiers, and any straight white guys pretending to be allies in order to fuck the art hose were at the very bottom. I used to be one of those. Being a white guy in their meetings and events felt like how I'd imagine to be a white guy at a Black Panthers meeting. It's rarely said aloud, but there's a not so subtle tension, an underlying menace that permeates every interaction with other members. Oh, excuse me, comrades. You're not welcome, you are tolerated, and only if you're useful. Only if you show twice as much enthusiasm. Only if you ever speak, except to infer. Only if you never speak. Sorry, to except to affirm someone else. Your only purpose is to be a whipping post, to nod along, smile like a jackass, and clap the loudest every time a minority says the dumbest shit you've ever heard, and to carry heavy shit. The women and gays will tell you to carry things anytime something weighs more than 5 ounces. They don't ask, they point to whatever needs moved and expect you to volunteer yourself. They do it with a satisfied sneer and a glare of contempt. This victim hierarchy of women, LGBTs, blacks, Latinos, Muslims, Jews, etc., rule every thought they have. Everything must be dissected, deconstructed, and categorized according to the oppressor oppressed dynamic. This is the lens through which they perceive the world. Nothing exists to them free of guilt or innocence. A stone isn't just a stone. It's an object attached to a label created by a language with a patriarchy. And for that sin, it must be redeemed, renamed, and rebaptized into the religion of the decolonization, and given a new name that doesn't vibrate the vocal cords in the same way as words invented by evil white men. And he continues here with the second post. This is the level of their neurons, of the neurosis, and it is often the side effect of a movement that attracts most mentally unstable, the outcast, people with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, don't know what DID is, I'm assuming it's another mental disorder, etc. Failed artists who believe the state should be funding their endless sabbaticals. Junkies with HIV and short-term memory loss, I have short-term memory loss, who want to abolish the police so they can do heroin in the street without getting arrested. Pedophiles who want anarchy so there won't be any cops to check their hard drives. Felons who want to get rid of all laws they've been caught breaking, including the ones they break every time they train with their comrades at the gun range, using guns they're not legally allowed to own. And at the top, the inner circle of women with septum piercings do all the busy work. They send the emails, coordinate with allies, hold fundraisers, in parentheses, their hatred of capitalism doesn't extend to capital, and communicate with partners at organizations like the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, UAW, which I believe is the United Auto Workers, a powerful union, etc., who pretend not to know them when asked. You see, Antifa is like a mercenary outfit. Any leftist organization can invite them to an event while maintaining plausible deniability. The 50501 movement doesn't advertise that it coordinates with local Antifa groups. They just tell them where the NGO, where the No King protests will be held and where the staging area is. And sometimes there's overlap, where an activist will be a volunteer for 50501 or the DSA while secretly being Antifa, meaning their fellow activists pretend not to know. So when the event happens, if Antifa gets violent or causes trouble, the organizers can say, well, it's not us, we're separate organizations. The black militants are often black nationalists who see the white liberals and Antifa as useful idiots to be raped and murdered once the revolution kicks off. They don't say that overtly, but it's obvious in their demeanor, how they interact with their white comrades. They're often members of fringe religious organizations like the Black Hebrew Israelites, Nation of Islam, or another group like the Moorish Sovereign Citizens, which is the first time I'm ever hearing of them. But I'm assuming it has something to do with the Moors in Morocco. But, anyways, the dynamics are complicated, as these black militant groups aren't Marxists, but they're happy to use Marxism as a tool against other whites. It's not so much as an alliance as it is a coup. They'll smile and nod as someone quotes Lenin or Mao, but they only care about how Leninism and Maoism will help dismantle white communities and the government. Decolonization is a common cause that unites them. Now, originally, I had a different outro planned, but I'm just going to do something different. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each paragraph and give some notes about my experience with leftism and leftist groups and individuals and stuff like that. Because one advantage the right has over the left that the left doesn't have over the right is that we understand them infinitely more than they understand us. They genuinely think we are fascist, but we know we're not fascistic. However, we know they're communistic. And more often than not, they're usually pretty open and proud about their communism, which I'm assuming is why they think we're fascistic, because they think if we are communistic, then radical leftism, they must be on the opposite side. They must be fascistic. But there's very few fascistic groups on the right. The Grapers is probably the most mainstream one you're gonna find, but even then, the Grapers have their own problems, and not everybody on the right even respects them. I know I don't. But anyways, what I wanted to talk about through each paragraph, um, we'll start with this one. Even someone who's well read in Marx would laugh at what the average anti-fascist believes about Marxism left-wing philosophy. Now, I tried my best to read Das Kapital and On the Jewish Question so that I could better understand Marxism, so that I could have a specific reason to hate it other than on the left. And now I tried doing the same thing about Mein Kampf. I tried reading it, but dude, you do not understand how much of a schizophrenic Hitler really was until you try to read Mein Kampf. That dude was fucking crazy, and I'm glad him and his ideology died. Well, I'm glad he died. Anyways, as someone who's well read on Marx would laugh at the average anti-fascist belief about Marxism left-wing philosophy is true. What modern leftists believe is just batshit insanity. Mein Kampf level of batshit insanity compared to what Marx himself and Engels himself believed. You know, I can't really go into these specific details at the top of my head right now, but Marxism is not compatible with wokeism. But wokeism is the vehicle that modern Marxists use. What do I mean by that? Well, three things: gender equality, racial equality, and sexual equality. If anybody, even with a modicum of information about Karl Marx, knows, they could tell you that Marx was extremely homophobic. He hated black people. He hated gay people. He hated women. And especially he hated Jews. Now, the hatred of Jews is something that the left still uses. That's like the one core pillar of Marxism they still retain to this day. They hate Jews. They hate capitalists. But other than that, it's like almost two completely separate ideologies. Marx himself is probably spinning in the grave right now, looking up at us from hell, screaming, why? Why are people using my ideology and my name like this? Marxism did not believe in equality of the sexes, races, or genders at all. He hated women. Like I said, he hated gays, hated blacks. He did not like them. So so the idea of Antifa, Marx would probably be proud of, an anti-fascist action organization. But the idea of Trantifa, the idea of transgenderism becoming not only mandatory on the left, but openly promoted and defended, Marx would hate it. If Marx was alive today, he would probably be either just a normal social democrat or he would be conservative because of how different modern Marxism is compared to classical Marxism. Modern Marxism is on steroids, pretty much. It's just a fucking shit ideology. It was already a shit ideology, Marxism, but it's just even more shit now. The second thing is the modern American version of the movement, leftism, is a shaky alliance between left-wing anarchists and communists. Now, anarchism is inherently a left-wing ideology. Don't let any ANCAP tell you otherwise. Okay, don't let any fucking libertarian tell you otherwise. Anarchism is a left-wing ideology. Now, what is anarchism? Anarchism, in the old sense, is the abolition of government. But the anarchism of today is not like that. It's anarchism on steroids. The anarchism of today is we want to abolish the current government and replace it with a grand council of anarchism that specifically monitors every single citizen and micromanages their daily life to ensure they only perform pre-approved anarchist activities. That's unironically what anarchists believe. They don't want less government, they want more government, but of their ideology, of the left wing. And same with the communists as well. But the shaky alliance part is what I really want to talk about because that's what the left today really is. It's a loose coalition. Like we can use the Democratic Party as an example. The Democratic Party has a lot of communist voters. And the only reason they have those communist voters is because they tried to appeal to the communist crowd. Um, However, the Democrats are in a tough position for 2028. They have two routes they can go down. They can either go full on socialism and nominate, say, AOC for president, or they can try to hold on to the last vestige of quote unquote normal liberalism and nominate Gavin Newsom as as their nominee for president. But because of the shaky, loose alliance, the problem they come across is that if they nominate AOC, they're going to alienate their non-communist base. If they nominate Newsom, they're going to nominate their actual communist base. And since they really need those communist votes to win, like they did in 2020, they're kind of fucked. They really are fucked. Uh, it's not like the right, where the right is mostly solidified around MAGA. I would say around 85 to 90% solidified about MAGA. There's still some rhinos. The Grapers, unfortunately, I'm going to have to consider the Grapers on the right. They're one of us, unfortunately. They're the radical wing. They take up about 5%. About 10%. I would say the rhinos are about 5%. Yeah, so about 85% of the right, thereabouts, is solidified around MAGA. We have more or less one movement, more or less one core ideology. We just stick behind it. But the left is not like that. Because of the aforementioned shaky alliance, the left really has no core ideology. They hate the right. That's really the only unifying. They hate the right, and there's something down here. I think it's on the bottom one. Hmm. Yes, decolonization is the common cause that unites them. That's with the left. They hate the right, they hate the whites, they hate white rights and right whites. They just want to abolish anything to do with whiteism and rightism. But that's all they have unifying them. Everyone on the left, every subgroup and sub ideology has their own vision and version of what the future of a left wing America would look like. It's the same boat that the communists were in, the Bolsheviks, I should say, in Russia. But the Bolsheviks at least had, after Lenin died, had Stalin to unify around. There was still Bukharin, there was still Bukharin, there was still Trotsky, but they were very lesser figures. Trotsky was a major lesser figure, but he didn't have the appeal, especially after he was killed. Trotskyism didn't have the appeal in the Soviet Union that Stalinism did. However, because of that cult of personality, the second Stalin died, a revisionist like Khrushchev came in. Khrushchev was still a communist, still a socialist at heart, but he was not a Stalinist. And so he enacted a lot of policies of anti-Stalinism um, because of that, because of how he tolerated Stalinism. He didn't like him. He tolerated Stalin. Uh, it was right here. You're not welcome, but you are tolerated. That's pretty much how Khrushchev treated Stalin. And if the American left can somehow find a unifying figure, that's actually no. Joe Biden. I'll use Joe Biden as an example. Joe Biden, for better or for worse, was a unifying figure of the left between the communists, the anarchists, and the moderate liberals. The moderate liberals. However, I mean, he's not dead, but he stepped down. He did. He decided to not run for a second term, uh, and so they lost that figure, and so they have nobody. However, if they do find someone in the future, they're going to run into a situation with Stalin, where that figure is going to have to be strong, a strong man like Trump. They're going to have to unify around him and make a cult of personality around him. But when that person steps down, like Biden did, they're going to be in a scramble. They're going to be in a frenzy because they won't have any. They didn't have a set designated successor to Biden. Technically, by law, Kamala would have been a successor, but come on, really, Kamala, while she does have her own communist background, she's not a unified figure like Biden was. Uh, so we noticed that with the left. The second Biden stepped down, they lost their teeth pretty much. That's why they lost 2024. They had no unifying figure. They had no unifying message or force. All they could muster up was, well, we're not the meanie poo-poo dumbikins. That's not good enough. That's not good enough to energize the left to vote. And anybody, I'm pretty sure Ready Go Politics himself, I follow him every now and then, has explained this in detail before. You need to have an energized base to go out and win. The right in 2020, our only message was we're not the communists who will continue Trumpism. But we saw in 2020 that Trumpism started to fail a little bit. Now granted, it was we can look back on it and say it was entirely because Trump was surrounded by former not Biden, Obama advisors and appointees and stuff like that. We could try to chalk it up to that, but because of that, Trumpism was starting to fail in 2020, and so um, Trumpism was starting to fail, and so the only message the right had for the election was we're not the left. Well, that wasn't good enough to energize the base, and while Trump got a record amount of votes, he didn't win. In 2024, the Democrats had the same problem. They didn't have a unifying figure or message. Their only message was, we're not Trump, we're not the right. And that wasn't good enough to energize voters. So that's why they lost. Let's see what this... I already did that one. Here's another one. Hierarchy. Unspoken hierarchy. And it goes into the... right here, the oppressor-oppressed dynamic. Now, the oppressor-oppressed dynamic is trans people at the top. Black people are usually either tied or right above them, depending on. It's usually a little bit above, but they're usually like right at each other's level with being golden cows. Women are below that. Gays are about equal with women, a little bit below, depending on what type of gay, and then men, especially white men, are at the very bottom with the hierarchy. And uh, but because of that, because the black militants are at the top, the black militants, where is it? Uh, is talk about here about how they only use Marxism as a vehicle. Oh, right here. The dynamics are complicated as these black militant groups, which are at the top of the hierarchy, only use Marxism as the vehicle to dismantle the white man. They don't. A lot of the times, they don't actually believe in Marxism. They don't actually believe in Maoism. They're black nationalists. Okay, they don't actually believe in that stuff. They just want an all-black state only for black people. That's all they want. And we kind of see this in South Africa, where to an extent they don't entirely believe in communism. I mean, they still use socialism in the economic sense, but they don't use socialism in the the social sense. You know, uh, they just use it. They just use communism as a vehicle to ensure there's a black ethno state ran only by them, only for them, and that's similar to black nationalists in America want. There's a movement called the New Africa or Nova Africa movement. It's very small and fringe, but it exists. And it's a movement, I believe, of ex-Black Panthers in the Deep South, like stretching from Louisiana to South Carolina, uh, that want to turn all those states in the South to a black ethno state. That's the goal. And because of them, because of that, and because of the black militants, the black nationalists, usually the ones at the top of the totem pole in Antifa, it kind of puts Antifa in a bind where the people in charge of the organization, well, at least the face of the organization, don't actually want anarchism or communism or anarcho-communism. They just want black nationalism. They will use Antifa as a vehicle, but they don't actually believe in the ideology, and they don't care. They don't care what happens afterwards. They just want to, they just want the ethno state. And this is something, being a white guy in the meetings felt like how I imagine being a white guy at the Black Panthers meeting. This is how I felt when I dabbled in leftism. Now, when I say that, I was a fucking teenager. I didn't know shit about politics. I didn't really even understand politics until maybe about 2020-ish, 2021, when, you know, I grew up and I realized, oh shit, I'm not, you know, I was a fucking retard in the past. Now I actually got to research and do my own shit for once. Um, but this is how I felt being my few brief years on the left. I was not appreciated. I was often ostracized and outcasted. Anytime they had a problem to blame, anytime they had a problem, they would blame it on the white man, and I was always the white man in the group they'd blame it on. And so I just got tired of it. And I'm sure you've seen it before. I might add it on screen, but there's an old, I don't know how old it is, but there's a political cartoon comic where the left pushes a centrist down, and the right is the only person there to pick him back up, dust him off, and say, hey, are you okay, buddy? And the left says, why are you siding with the right? That's how it felt. That's how it felt for me. That's kind of what I went through. The left kept pushing and punching me down and down and down. And I had no choice but to go to the right. Because they're the only ones, the only political group that didn't want to fucking kill me immediately on sight. And I'm not joking when I say that. They outright immediately, the left hate whites. They want to kill all white people. That's a core pillar of leftism. But the right isn't like that. The right doesn't want to, you know, sure, the right doesn't want to kill anybody. We might want to persecute some groups like Franco did, but we don't want to kill anybody, you know? We're not fucking, I mean, the Groypers do. The Groypers definitely do. But the MAGA part of the right is not like that. We don't care if you're black, white, gay, lesbian, straight, whatever. We don't care. As long as you respect us, we're gonna respect you. If you want to be part of the movement, go ahead. You know, I know we're not on the defensive anymore. We're on the offensive, and so it's stupid to use the argument of the demon rats are the real racists. Look how many black people we have on our side. But I'm just gonna use the argument just for this quick second. We have plenty of black people on in the MAGA movement. We have plenty of lesbians in the MAGA movement, the gay people. Um, we have plenty of Asians and Hispanics and women in the MAGA movement. We don't reject them because of those innate characteristics. You know, we don't exactly accept them because of that, but we don't reject it either. We tell them, hey, we have our problems with black criminals on the right, but obviously MAGA doesn't view all black people as violent animals. You know, I don't view. I think Terrence K. William, his name is the comedian. I don't view him as some monster who's gonna kill me. I don't view him as that. I view him as one of us. He's one of he. I don't know him, but I'm gonna say he's one of my friends. He's one of my buddies. He's part of us. He's part of the right. He's a cool beans. He's a cool dude. I like him. Um, and Milo Yiannopoulos, he's not gay anymore, but he was gay. But you know, I have my criticisms of the man, but we still accept him on the right because he was one of us. He didn't make being gay his entire personality. He didn't shame us for mostly being straight. He was just one of us. But on the left, it's completely different. I believe right here on the left, this is how it feels to be white. You're not welcome, you're tolerated, but only if you're useful, idiot. Only if you show twice as much enthusiasm. Only if you speak to affirm someone else. The left only accept whites if you're willing to just be a tool, a foot soldier for them, a cannon fodder. If you're willing to be cannon fodder for the battle, for the quote unquote the Great Revolution or whatever they fantasize about. And that's why I personally can't get on board with it. I just can't. It's fucking stupid. I don't want to die just for an ideology that hates me. I don't want to have to fight for the right. As in like go to war, fight for the right. But if I have to, at least I know the right will honor me in some way, even if it's just a simple, here's a folded flag and a posthumous medal. You know, it's something. It'll be better than the left, the leftist comrade going to the battlefield, picking up bodies and spitting on mine and burning mine. While burying the black comrades that fought next to me. It's not like that. So it's just fucking. That's how it feels to be white. And that's how I felt, and that's why I left the left. I couldn't take it anymore. I was not gonna be a whipping post. I was not gonna smile like a jackass and clap the loudest every time a minority says the dumbest shit I've ever heard. I'm not gonna do it. I'm good. Uh, I think it's pretty funny that the women and the gays will tell you to carry things sometimes weighs more than 5 ounces, and then also talks about how later in here somewhere how women with septum piercings do all the busy work. They send emails, coordinate with allies, hold fundraisers, communicate with organizations, stuff like that. It's funny that for an organization, that for a group that supposedly hates the white male patriarchy, they sure love to have men do the heavy lifting and women do all the house chores. Just saying, it's pretty funny. Let's see. We already talked about that. Oh, that's right here. And for that sin, it must be redeemed, renamed, rebaptized into the religion of decolonization, and given a new name that doesn't vibrate the vocal cords of the same words as an evil white man. They will call. They will. They don't. They and right here we talk about this is how they perceive the world. Nothing exists in free of guilt or innocence. A stone isn't just a stone. It's an object attached to a label created by the language of the patriarchy. They'll rename a stone to something stupid. The word stone, they'll rename it to something stupid like a chukachaka. A chukachaka. Just because a chukachaka isn't a white man's word. Stone is a white man's word. And so they view anything associated with the white man that needs to be destroyed or renamed and rebaptized. You know? That's why, especially during Biden's tenure, and even the last year of Trump's first term in 2020, there was a lot of renaming and rebaptizing done to military forts and parks and streets and stuff like that. Thankfully, it's all being undone, but the scars are still there. It's still part of our history, and people are going to have to learn about in history books in the future. You know. Let's see. This is the level of their neurosis. Neurosis. It is often a side effect of a movement that attracts people with mental instability, the outcast. This is also very true. I am someone who is somewhat mentally unstable. but I'm not a fucking crazy lunatic. I don't chant for the death of anybody. I don't believe in super duper radical ideologies. I'll joke, I'll make Hitler jokes, but I'm not defending the man in any meaningful way. Like I said before, I don't like him. I'm glad he's dead, and I'm glad his ideology is like 95% dead. Fuck him. You know, um, but mentally unstable people are. I already talked about communists being a major voting base for the left, but mentally unstable people, they overlap, but they're also a major voting base for the left. People who are mentally unstable make are more susceptible to propaganda. And when you're more susceptible to propaganda, you're more likely to make irrational decisions. And when you're more likely to make irrational decisions, the Democrats can easily coax them into voting for them, vote blue no matter who, no matter what. You know, but it's not just the mentally unstable. It's people who have set goals, who know what they're doing. Junkies with HIV who want to abolish the police so they can do heroin in the street without getting arrested. Pedophiles who want anarchy, so there won't be uh where is it? So there won't be any cops to check their hard drives. Felons who want to get rid of all the laws they've been caught breaking, including the ones they break every time they train with their comrades at a range using a gun they're not legally allowed to own. And all that is true, especially the pedophiles part. Listen, the majority of leftists are pedophiles. That's just a straight fact. The majority of them are. The majority of leftists view children not as um, innocent and pure beings that should remain untouched through life, but they view them as little adults who can consent to the same thing big adults can. That's not true. In no world can someone under the age of 18 consent to the same thing someone over the age of 18 can. In no world can that happen. But the majority of leftists are pedophiles, and that's how they view children. And now here is really a really funny part. Felons who want to get rid of all the laws they've been caught breaking, including the ones they break every time they train with their comrades at a range, using a gun they're legally not allowed to own. See, the leftists, the communists especially, they all vote in for massive gun control. But then they always seem to have access to illegal firearms that the people they voted for banned in their state, city, municipality, whatever. And it's because the left doesn't believe in total gun control. What they really believe in is that the right wing should not have guns and the left should have the guns, so that when the left attacks the right cannot fight back. Like what happened to Charlie Kirk. I doubt the shooter would have gotten far if the campus wasn't a no gun zone and if people there were armed. Because I know Bubba and his friends would have immediately started tracking down the shooter with no hesitation. But, because no one was armed, no one could. I mean, unfortunately, it's not like Charlie could be defended. Unless someone stood right in front of him, Charlie couldn't have been defended. I believe he was going to die no matter what. But the shooter would have been apprehended, or frontier justice would have been dealt a lot quicker if people there were armed. Um, but I thought this is pretty funny because that's what leftists do. They don't believe in total gun control. They just believe that they should have the gun. So when they break into your home, they have legal right to kill you, and you can't do anything about it. I already talked about that. Right here. You see, Antifa is like a mercenary outfit. Any leftist organization can invite them to an event while maintaining possible deniability. And Antifa has maintained that mercenary um, colloquiality, or whatever you call it, because they've paid off a lot of people, especially like Joe Biden earlier, I mentioned earlier, to say to declare in front of live national television that Antifa is not a group, but it's just an ideology, and you can't persecute an ideology in America. Meanwhile, he knows Antifa is a group, and he knows Antifa supports him, and Antifa is a large reason why he got elected in the first place. Joe Biden, a straight white male, uh, he was just a useful idiot to the left. I don't think he knew that. He might have. I don't think he knew that. I think he genuinely thought the left was on his side, which is, why they gave him the fake 83 million vote mandate. But that's a conversation for another time. Anyways, sorry, my headset died. But he did this. Joe Biden did this for plausible deniability. He did it so that in the event Antifa ever got rowdy at any future events of his or events of Kamala Harris, because they were gonna run her at some point, probably 2028 if Biden had won his 2024. Um, so that if they cause any trouble, they could say, "Oh well, it wasn't us doing it. We are a different organization right here. It's not us. We're separate organizations." But they know left Antifa is part of them, and they know that a good part of them is Antifa. They know it. So let's see. I already talked about the black nationalists. I talked about that. Oh, right here. I originally my old outro was gonna be I was gonna read all of this, but I I don't really care about this. You can read it if you want. But I really wanted to read here is this right here. Screenshot their calls to violence and report them all to the FBI. Now, obviously, this should go without saying, but I have to say it for disclaimer purposes. I condemn and do not condone any sort of retaliationary violence against the left in honor of Charlie Kirk. I don't agree with any of it. I don't like it. I expect people not to do it. I'm glad that so far we haven't. Instead, so far what we've done, if we've created his account on Twitter. It's called the Charlie Kirk Data Foundation, and what it is an account with a website attached to it, where you can report people who have celebrated. Uh, it's usually on Facebook or whatever. People who celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk and have called for the death of other conservative uh, um, representatives, I guess you'd call it. Um, and with the website, you report the person's screenshots, and what the website does is it tracks them down to where they work, and it tries to get them fired from where they work. So far, it's there's been a few cases where it hasn't worked, but so far unilaterally it's worked. Every single person that's reported to it that has been discovered, they've gotten fired. And so that's what I think we should do. The right should do instead of stooping down to the left's level and enacting violence. We should not enact violence. What we should do instead is just get them fired from their jobs, like they did us. Remember when the left fired us because we refused the vaccine? Remember when the left on Twitter, before Elon Musk bought it, banned Robert Malone, the guy who invented the modern day vaccine, I believe mRNA vaccine, I believe is what he invented. But he invented the modern day vaccine method that all vaccinations use. They banned him because he said that the COVID vaccine right now, as it stands, this is a couple years ago obviously, is not safe or effective. Wait a couple of years for more testing and research to be done for an effective vaccine. Uh, it took um, it took a long time for vaccines for other diseases to be discovered, you know, um, and that's what he was saying. Wait for it to be tested and wait for it to be sanitized, I guess, to make sure it's truly safe. And they banned him for it. He didn't say never take the vaccine. He didn't say don't take any vaccine ever, you know. But they still banned him for it. They still banned him because he didn't go along with the narrative. And that's just we need to give that left that treatment to the left. Ban them and get them fired for calling to violence. You know, if you see any of them calling for violence, report them to the Charlie Kirk Data Foundation and the FBI. If you see any of them celebrating the calls to violence or celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, just report them to the Charlie Kirk Foundation. Um, anyways, that was this thread I found interesting on Twitter about Antifa and how the left works. Um, I just want to share it with the people because I thought it was very interesting, and I've experience with this stuff, and I'm sure some of you do as well. Um, anyways, I don't really have an outro planned. This is all kind of candid with no script. So, oh fuck, I should have done this instead of just hiding my username. Anyways, uh, yeah, I've got nothing else. So go read this thread if you want. Danny Wolf, Danny's Manifest at Danny's Manifesto on Twitter. It's a very interesting thread. Anyways, that's all I have for today. So I'll see you guys later at some point.